Imagine a world where this, a simple scratch from a rose thorn, is a death sentence. For 99% of human history, a tiny infection didn't just make you sick. It invaded your blood. It turned your own body against you. And there was nothing, absolute zero, that doctors could do to stop it. Millions die from cuts, blisters, and scratches. A child scraping their knee playing tag, that could be a fatal injury. Today, the solution to that problem is worth more to the global economy than all the gold ever mined in history. One discovery, one glass vial. It cut the death rate of pneumonia from 30% to 1%. It saved over 200 million lives. But this discovery didn't come from a billion-dollar research facility. It didn't come from a team of geniuses in white towers. It came from a mess. The man who found it, Alexander Fleming, wasn't a dashing hero. He was a brilliant but notoriously messy scientist who loved eating sandwiches in the lab. And history turned on a single moment, when he simply blinked and noticed something everyone else had missed. But to understand the miracle, we have to go back to the mud. Fleming was a farm boy from the Scottish Highlands. He learned science by watching nature, by freezing still in the grass and observing the hidden world around him, watching how life and death were connected by the thinnest of threads. But the peace of the farm didn't last. By 1905, he was trapped in the gray machinery of London, pushing paper in a shipping office. He hated it. He became a doctor just to escape the boredom. He treated patients mechanically, stamp, prescribe, stamp, until the world broke apart. 1914, the Great War. The rain started falling, and it didn't stop for 4 years. Fleming was sent to the lecture halls of war, but the lessons here weren't academic. He went to the Western Front, the trenches. The mud was filled with manure and deadly bacteria. Men weren't just dying from bullets. They were dying from gas gangrene. They would sit in the mud, waiting for the infection to take them. Fleming worked in the field tents. He watched the lanterns sway over lines of dying boys. He looked into their wounds. He saw that the medical establishment was wrong. Doctors were pouring carbolic acid, strong antiseptics, straight into the deep wounds. Fleming watched in horror. He realized the cure was actually helping the enemy. The acid was killing the patient's white blood cells, their natural defenders. But the bacteria? They were hiding deep in the tissue, surviving the acid, and coming back stronger. He wrote it down. He screamed. The war ended. Fleming returned to St. Mary's in the 1920s. He was haunted by the trenches, determined to find a better way. But mostly, he was just messy. One day in 1921, he had a bad cold. He was holding a petri dish filled with yellow bacteria, and he sneezed right onto the sample. Gross? Yes. But Fleming didn't throw it away. He watched the mucus hit the gel. To his shock, the bacteria died. He had discovered lysozyme, the body's natural antiseptic. He became obsessed. He started playing with microbes. He literally painted with them. He was an artist of germs. He would take different colored bacteria and draw ballerinas, houses, even the Union Jack flag in petri dishes. He timed them so the colors would bloom right when the Queen visited the hospital. He made headlines with his microbial art, but there was a problem. Lysozyme was weak. It couldn't kill the real killers like staph. He needed something stronger. Summer 1928. Fleming is tired. He packs his bags for a vacation with his family. A normal scientist would clean up. A normal scientist would bleach the plates. Fleming? He leaves a stack of dangerous staph cultures sitting on a bench, right next to an open window. While he was gone, fate drifted in. A microscopic spore of mold floated up from the floor below. and landed on the one dish that could change history. It began to bloom. It began to fight. It created a chemical weapon, a zone of inhibition, a ring of death where no bacteria could survive. September 3rd, Fleming comes back. He starts tossing the ruined dishes into the trash, one by one. But he grabs one back. He looks at it, the mold, the halo, the death of the enemy. He didn't shout "Eureka!" He just smiled and whispered, "That's funny." He called the mold juice penicillin. But here is the part of the story most people don't know. He failed. He wasn't a chemist. He couldn't extract the medicine. Every time he tried to purify it, the liquid turned black and vanished. It was unstable. It was useless. He published his findings in 1929, and the world shrugged. His papers gathered dust for 10 years. Fleming gave up. He moved on. The cure for the world was sitting in a fridge at St. Mary's, ignored. The years flew by. 1930. Hitler was rising in Europe. A new war was coming, and we still didn't have the medicine. But in 1939, at Oxford University, a team found Fleming's old paper. Howard Florey and Ernst Chain. They were the opposite of Fleming. They were organized, intense, and funded. They turned the lab into a factory. But it was wartime. They couldn't get glass beakers, so they used bedpans. Hundreds of ceramic beddans, milk churns, even bathtubs, all filled with foul-smelling mold juice. The lab became known as the Bedpan Commando. They built a freeze-drying machine to catch the magic dust. It took gallons of mold juice just to get a teaspoon of medicine. Finally, they had it. A tiny pinch of brown gold. Penicillin. 1941. The first human trial. Albert Alexander, a policeman. He scratched his face on a rose bush. He was dying. The infection was eating him alive. They injected him with their entire supply of penicillin. It was a miracle. Within 24 hours, he sat up. The fever broke. The infection retreated. It worked, but they ran out. They tried desperately to recycle the medicine from his urine, filtering it back out to inject him again. But it wasn't enough. The vial was empty. Albert Alexander died, not because the medicine failed, but because they couldn't make enough of it. The scientists fled to America. They needed industrial power. They needed to scale up before D-Day. They searched the world for a better mold. They hired a woman named Mary Hunt. History remembers her as Moldy Mary. She scoured markets for rotting fruit, and she found it on a cantaloupe melon in a market in Peoria, Illinois. This specific mold produced 3,000 times more penicillin than Fleming's original spore. The factories turned on. The vats bubbled. By 1944, they were producing 2.3 million doses a month. D-Day, the beaches of Normandy. This time, when the soldiers fell, the medics had a weapon. No more carbolic acid, a simple shot, and the infection was gone. Headlines screamed the news, the wonder drug, the magic bullet. In 1945, Alexander Fleming, the messy farm boy, accepted the Nobel Prize. But in his speech, he didn't celebrate. He gave us a warning. He looked at the world and said, "Do not abuse this." He predicted that if we used it too much, the bacteria would learn. They would mutate. They would resist. Today, antibiotics have saved an estimated 200 million lives. Every time a child survives a strep throat or a mother survives a C-section, it is because of that open window. We live under the shield that Fleming accidentally forged. As Fleming said, one sometimes finds what one is not looking for. But the story isn't quite over. It started with a boy observing nature, and it ended with us conquering the microscopic world. Humanity moved forward, faster than ever before. But the rain still falls. and the books are still being written. Time is ticking on Fleming's warning. The war against bacteria never truly ended. But for now, we are winning because of a slob who opened his eyes and forgot to close a window.